Hi, Mickey.
Hey, Bob.
How you doing?
Fine. Happy Valentine's Day.
Hey, same to you. It's funny you should say that. I was just eating this cupcake that my wife gave me. It said "I love you" on it. I've eaten the part that said "love you," but you can see the I think.
Well, Bob, I don't have a wife, and I don't want to get all mawkish, but I got some flowers for you here.
For me?
For you, yes.
Oh,
here you
Mickey,
go. And this is
you're the only guy that did that this year.
They're not roses, Bob, because I thought that might be a little forward, but they're red carnations that I got down at the 7-Eleven.
And they're really for me? You're not just saying that, are you? You're not going to give them to some gal tonight, are you, Mickey?
It's possible that since you're across the country that I will give them to my mother.
Could you fax those? Could you fax those over?
But this one is for you, really.
So what have you been doing?
What? How do you mean? What have I been doing?
Well, in the sense of your recent history, any notable events?
No, I haven't been to any glamorous parties.
Oh.
It's been a quiet week. I've been blogging up a storm, and the really annoying thing about blogging is when you screw off, your hits go down, and when you blog a lot, your hits go up. So there actually is an incentive to work your ass off, which is really depressing.
Yeah, I'm looking for a job that's the other way around. I haven't found one.
I want to be able to coast.
You know, I had a celebrity sighting in Washington, D.C., where I was spreading the Bloggingheads gospel.
Cool.
Libby prosecutor Patrick Fitzgerald in the Starbucks at 14th in New York.
Really?
Yeah.
That's like a drug trafficking area, isn't it?
He was buying drugs. He was buying these two coffee drinks. And it was the day was over. The day's, a day in court was over. And I wondered, is he such a nice guy that he buys a coffee for one of his underlings, or was it like a 2-coffee night for him, or is he having an affair, or what? And I just don't know.
Pretty cool that he buys his own coffee, though.
I thought so. I thought there's a regular guy.
What a man.
Make your prediction. Is he going to win?
It's good question. I guess my prediction would be that he would win.
Okay.
It seems to me. I mean, just because it seems to me, if you look at the evidence, Libby said he'd forgotten about this thing about Joe Wilson's wife being a CIA agent. How could you forget about that? It's completely implausible you'd forget about that. Even if Tim Russert told him, he said that he was learning it anew for the first, as if for the first time. Well, that's wildly implausible.
Yeah.
So I guess I would convict, but there's the old reasonable doubt question, and it's not clear to me.
I know I would convict, even if I had reasonable doubts, but that's another story. By the way, 14th in New York is no longer like that. I think you're a little behind. When was the last time you were there?
Actually at 14th in New York.
Well, in the vicinity.
Oh, that's the vicinity of the convention center.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's been gentrified.
Now in the vicinity also of the New Republic, the Washington Monthly, and the Center for American Progress.
Huh. It's like Thought Central.
It's Thought Central. Next best thing to Bloggingheads TV. Vicky, one other quick preliminary. This Facebook thing is out of control.
I couldn't get on.
The Bloggingheads group on Facebook?
Really?
There were 21 people last time. Now there are 93 members.
Wow.
Now, it's true, it had gone from 0 to 21 in 2 weeks, and now 1 week to 93. So the slope of the growth curve has declined a little, but it's still strongly positive. And we still have as our goal colonization of the solar system with Bloggingheads aficionados.
I couldn't get on. Is it free? Can anybody sign up?
Anybody can sign up. It may be that you actually have to put your face up somewhere. I don't know. My wife has I use her membership in Facebook broadly. She hasn't joined the group yet, but she's thinking about it, and that would be 94.
Well, work on her. I think flowers on Valentine's Day will bring her around, probably.
That's taken care of, believe me.
Okay.
Sorry. Now go ahead.
No, I was just thinking the prosecution's making a big case that this is my last Libby thing, I promise, really. The prosecution's making a big case that the defense, that Libby only leaked to 2 reporters, Matt Cooper and Judy Miller. There's actually a very good graph on the Stiletto blog of all the reporters that Libby did leak to and the many more he didn't leak to. But I've realized, when you're leaking, if you're really effectively leaking, you want to give a reporter an exclusive. You don't want to say, hey, Judy, I have this hot story, and by the way, I'm blabbing to everybody else in town,
Right.
so if you invest a lot of money, you're going to get screwed. A lot of time, you're going to get screwed. You want to give the person an exclusive. So the fact that he didn't leak to a bunch of other reporters is in no way evidence that he wasn't leaking. He didn't intend to leak, because Judy Miller was his main girl.
Correct.
So there.
It's not the only man who can say that either. Now, also, but strictly
Light,
speaking,
please.
that's irrelevant. It's totally a perjury rap. And I might say a more valid one than the Clinton one was, because this wasn't like perjury entrapment, where they tried to lure him into an awkward moment by asking him a question totally irrelevant to the investigation. This was really important to the investigation, and he seems to have lied.
I guess that's right. I guess they were trying to argue that if he really had Flame on the mind, he would have been leaking to everybody. So he obviously didn't have Flame on the mind because he'd forgotten her. So it wasn't completely irrelevant to the perjury charge, because the perjury charge is precisely whether he had forgotten about her.
I see.
So Fitzgerald, your coffee boy, was trying to argue that it was irrelevant, but I think they let it in for that reason.
Once again, you make a good point, Mickey.
Anyway, none of those are our topics for the day.
True, but time's up, so gotta go.
Well, anyway, I'll always have my flowers. I'll just sit here and moan.
They're my flowers.
First up is Iraq, I guess. The surge is happening.
They did a sweep today in the Shiite part of Baghdad.
Right. The first point to make is Phil Carter has a pretty good piece in Slate about the 4 different wars we're really fighting in Iraq and how they all fighting one conflicts with the other. But he sort of argues that, well, the one war, which is the sectarian war in Baghdad, is sort of hard to fight because, if we go too hard into Shiite areas, that might undermine Maliki's government. Well, we do seem to be going into Shiite areas, so I say give the surge a chance.
Well, my feeling is more that, as I've said, the problem is we can't really do anything without aiding one side in the civil war or the other, or at least being perceived that way by one side or the other. And a good example of this is all these bombings that have been killing all these Shiites. We're getting blamed for those because in anticipation of the surge, we kind of forced the Shiite militias into, at least covert mode, if nothing else. Pay no attention to that.
You want to get that?
Pay no attention to that ringing phone.
Okay.
And so I'll talk in between rings. This will be an interesting challenge. The Shiites are blaming us for the bombings because we've gotten their militias out of the way, and the militias were protecting them against the Sunnis. And, whether or not that's true, that's going to be the way it's going to go. Everything we do is going to incur the wrath of one side or the other. So it's among other things, not a way to win a popularity contest. That's what foreign policy should be, but
it seems to me the Shiites had a legitimate beef if we cause the people who are protecting them to retreat and then don't provide protection ourselves. That doesn't mean that everything we do they're going to interpret the wrong way. If we actually do provide protection.
Well, yeah, but if we provide protection, you mean if we provide protection for the Shiites without killing any Sunnis? I don't think much of that's going to happen. And as soon as you kill some Sunnis, the Sunnis make the corresponding claim that we're eroding their defenses against the Shiites.
But the defense, if you read, I agree that it's difficult and everybody's going to be aggrieved, to the maximum extent possible. But if you read, again, Iraq the model, there's a large population that just wants peace and wants to be able to go to school and go to the store. And if they can do that, they're not going to be upset that you didn't kill enough Sunnis. And and there are bad guys, the people who are prosecuting the sectarian killing, it's not as if the entire Sunni neighborhood is behind the sectarian killing. They're bad guys, they've retreated. They're bad guys on the other side, they've retreated. And when the bad guys retreat, the people might be less pissed off. What seems clear to me is that, we're not going to, it's not like the surge is going to, if it's going to work, we're going to have to beat it through the end of Bush's term. I mean, this idea that we're going to be able to pull out quickly seems crazy. And I think Bush must realize, and Petraeus must realize is crazy. And the other thing is that the Iraqi general who's in charge did a truly insane thing, I think, by announcing that people who had fled the ethnic cleansing and moved into other neighborhoods, presumably neighborhoods where they were more welcome, will have to leave the homes that they're illegally squatting in. Well, so he's basically doing the exact opposite of what we thought he should do, which is sort of tacitly accept the sectarian partition of Baghdad. He's trying to reverse it and remix neighborhoods that have become unmixed.
Yeah, which seems to me, I mean, to try to roll back ethnic cleansing, I'm not sure there's any precedent for that in history. It'd be an interesting question that no doubt our able viewers can answer. But in the comments section, but the other kind of disturbing thing is the lack of coordination with the Americans. I mean, presumably if the surge, I mean, this announcement apparently caught the Americans by surprise, and if the surge is going to work, I would think there's going to have to be some pretty intricate coordination between the Iraqis and the Americans, right?
Yes, although people are always doing things that take us by surprise, and sometimes they want to take us by surprise as a way of showing their independence.
Well, fine, but that's not a good feature in a teammate. I mean, my point is we're going to have to really be a team to pull this off. It's just another reason to be pessimistic.
Right. That's been a constant in our relations with the Maliki government from the beginning. I mean,
well, another reason. I mean, I increasingly see the logic of the hockey ref solution. I got to say, the Ed Lutvak thing.
I'm not. My line is still. If the surge fails, I'll be there with you. But it's like Srebrenica. It's like, gee, if we don't fight, the Serbs are going to massacre a bunch of Muslims. And we didn't fight, and the Serbs massacred a bunch of Muslims. If we pull out, a whole bunch of people are going to die, and I think that there's a tremendous moral pressure not to just pull out and say, you guys fight it out, when you know that the result is going to be a lot of people who don't really like this sectarian fighting.
Well, there is this counter argument that if we pull out, the regional powers will start taking responsibility, and that yes, there will be some more ethnic cleansing, but no more people will die than will die if we do whatever we're going to do. I don't know.
What's the historical precedent for that? For people being on the verge of slaughtering each other, and then you say, okay, go ahead, slaughter each other, and they don't. Seems to me they usually do.
It's a good question of what precedents people like this are citing. I mean, if people want to see this, I think a version of this is in this Fukuyama dialogue I just did on the site. When you look at why he's optimistic about Iraq, it has to do with the regional powers stepping up and taking responsibility. But I think, is sympathetic to the solution that we discussed last time of kind of peacefully abetting peaceful population transfers to avert ethnic cleansing. But that's not the Bush plan, or if it is, they're hiding it from us. And the announced Iraqi plan is now the opposite of that. So I don't know. It seems like a mess.
Correct. It's hard to believe that Super Dave, as Phil Carter calls General Petraeus, is that stupid.
He's not stupid.
Yeah, since he's obviously not stupid. Okay, well, on to Hillary, unless we have...
No, the other weird thing is this report that Muqtada al-Sadr has gone to Iran. Who knows what to make of that? I mean, does he think that Maliki has now completely turned on him and they're actually going to hunt him down or something? I don't know.
There are all sorts of people who want him dead, and if not us, then, members of some sect. I mean, he's having trouble controlling his own troops, and didn't he spend a lot of time in Iran before the war and during the war? And,
Yeah, maybe it's nothing. And then there's, of course...
Seems to me he has a pied-à-terre in Iran, so what?
Exactly. The man's got to have a private life.
I mean, we're trying to embarrass him with it, but it's hard, I mean...
No, it's just a recent report. I decided to throw it out. The other thing is, of course, Bush having trouble selling these claims about Iran, the Iranian government actually providing weapons that are being used against us. But, I mean, they deserve to have their credibility questioned. So
correct. He's half the government is pulling back from them also. So
is what?
Pulling back from them, and your Mexico analogy applies, which is if a foreign power had invaded Mexico and was trying to bring peace and stability to it,
we would be doing what Iraq is doing, what Iran is doing in Iraq, or some variant of it.
we would have our people there, and gee, some American weapons might find their way across the border.
Could happen.
So, yes, I agree.
So on to Hillary. You steered me to this Matt Iglesias item. I didn't have time to really thoroughly scan and didn't totally get the picture, so you're going to have to illuminate things.
Right. Okay. So now we're on Hillary.
I guess, unless you want to.
Yeah. No. Well, Hillary
will bring us back to Iraq. I somehow
right.
feel.
Well, everybody is saying that Hillary has to do something about her Iraq vote. She voted for the war, surrounded it with a bunch of conditional statements saying, he should really try diplomacy, he should bring in the inspectors, blah blah blah. But she voted to authorize the war, and she's running in the Democratic primaries for president with a primary electorate that hates that and wants her to apologize. And she's hemming and hawing and saying, well, the problem is that Bush misused my authority, which is fine. I mean, that's one level of sort of dissembling, and that's sort of semi-justifiable. I mean, I sort of was wishing against better judgment that this was all a bluff and Bush actually wouldn't invade. I don't know how I would have voted, when the vote was taken, but and Hillary should have known better, and so that vote was wrong. But then she has all these bloggers working for her who seem to go a step further and sort of deny that she ever supported the war, when in fact
are they really saying that?
Well, they're practically saying that, to say, oh no, don't you see she said this? Don't you see she said that? And that's the problem when you have bloggers working for you. It seems to me they'll sort of grasp at whatever advantage they can and nibble away like hundreds of little mice, even when if you step back from it, the idea that Hillary, is sort of denying that she even has anything to apologize for because she never supported the war.
Well, aren't these bloggers, if they're really working for her, aren't they subject to some centralized control?
Well, yes, but that's the point. It's quite hard to control them.
It's just because bloggers are just.
Well, they get up in the morning and they have to say, well, okay, what 5 blows can I strike for the cause today? And if you have to check all 5 blows out with Hillary, you ain't gonna blog.
Yeah, it seems to me. One thing she could say, given what she's already said, is she could stand by this idea that in voting for the resolution, she just wanted to give Bush the authority to, threaten the use of force and, if necessary, use it. But then with the UN inspectors, and this she's all said, right? She said so, and she says, but then with the UN inspectors in there and finding no weapons, he shouldn't have gone to war, right? She says all that, and then she should go ahead and say, so my mistake, and I'm sorry for this, and I apologize for this, is that I should have said on the eve of war, I should have expressed my reservations and said, wait, this is too soon. Couldn't she say that without?
Well, and that I should have known that Bush was a schmuck and was going to actually not invade.
Yeah, my point is, it seems to me there's a way for her to express contrition and even apology without going back on anything she said so far.
Right. Now, that's what I would do if I were her. But the problem is, of course, that she has positioned herself in the first 2 years of the invasion as one of the Democrats willing to support the war. So she wasn't criticizing Bush for
well, she literally said that
until it went sour. So even that would be insincere. But I agree that would be a lot better than what she's doing now.
So she should have. Excuse me. She should have hired us.
Well, she's had years to think about this, and the fact that she's she's coming out with this lame, it's Bush's fault, I was misled, stuff. Now it's sort of weird. Why would she think that it was going to fly? The only good thing one could say is that it's so early in the campaign that she's, she reverses herself, in March and throws herself at the feet, at the mercy of the Democratic electorate and says, I was wrong, I was so very wrong. She's got plenty of time to recover.
Well, I think she should say she was wrong about what I'm saying. She should say she's wrong about.
No, I agree but between you and me.
Yeah, well, I'll keep this quiet. No, don't worry.
That's what I would have done. I probably would have. I might have voted for the war on the grounds that, you wanted Bush to have the authority to threaten war when he went to the United Nations. But between you and me, that would have been a stupid vote, too. The right vote was to vote against the war.
Well, in retrospect,
Do you agree?
that's a very
Well,
prescient comment of you to make, Mickey. That's good.
Not that the war is not going to work out for the best decade.
Yeah, you're still optimistic.
No, I just still think there's a possibility, but it was a bad bet. And the right thing to do was to recognize that this bad bet was coming down the road.
That would have been right.
By far the best, Hillary's defense amounts, her real defense amounts to that brilliant Saturday Night Live skit. Did you see that?
I think I read about it. What
It was brilliant. She said, her basic defense was, the Democrats know me. They know my support for the war was completely insincere. They don't really think I was for it. They knew I was just for it to save my political hide. And that really is sort of ultimately the reason Democrats...
That was someone portraying her saying that, right?
Yeah. It was a parody. But a brilliant parody, I claim.
Okay.
Probably written by Tom Downey, a Republican. So there.
Okay.
So what was it about Matt Iglesias' post that you don't understand?
I was having trouble. I didn't have much time, and he quoted something from her blog or one of her bloggers or something, and then he was mentioned in it. So it was like some kind of recursion problem where I couldn't figure out what was.
I mean, he was just saying, look, are we really going to debate whether Hillary supported the war? I mean, she voted for the war. That's what the issue is.
So you agree with Matt?
Yeah. That's why the title of my post was Iglesias won, Hillary nothing.
Very good. I saw him in Washington.
The subtle indication. Sorry, what?
I saw him in Washington.
Really?
It was just an epic networking spree on my part. It was amazing.
Did you hype him up? Or is he now bigger than us and he's starting his own Bloggingheads network?
He didn't seem to recognize me or know my name. So apparently, yes.
That happens. It goes right to their head.
It really does. It really does. You make them famous.
You want to talk about Anna Nicole?
I'm sorry. I in the end, I don't think this is going to be worth it. I mean, I thought maybe we could have like a classy, sophisticated discussion about Anna Nicole Smith that raised deep and troubling questions and would be an excuse to put her name in a hot link that people would all click on.
Yeah, that's the standard.
And I thought I had a kind of pretext because I really was. When I was like watching, I saw a little flash of cable TV, like really soon after she died, and it was like CNN or something, and they were already like more or less joking about it. And usually, conventional cable news is like hyper grave about all of this, hyper solemn about.
I was shocked. That happened on the blogosphere. I mean, I saw blogs snarking at her like. Immediately, which I found very distasteful. I'm shocked that it actually leached into cable.
Well, I think maybe this was after like one guy had claimed paternity, so that was becoming a joke, But but it did raise the question of like, when is it okay to joke about death? And also, there's a related question of kind of. What is a decent interval for joking about certain things? I mean, in this Fukuyama dialogue, at the very beginning, I made a joke. It was not about 9/11, but it involved 9/11. And as soon as it escaped my lips, I thought, oh, is that bad? Is it too, And then I thought, well, look, 6 years, And it was not really, like, about the event. But anyway, this is a very murky area. And are there any analogs or precedents for Anna Nicole Smith, somebody who was held in such low repute that they die and you just start laughing? Or is this sui generis?
I've never heard it. I was shocked that, I've never seen anybody who wasn't a terrorist or a bank robber or
so
a
what
murderer
was it about
die, and they immediately make fun of her. Well, I guess people thought she was sort of a cartoony figure and not a real person, and they could see it coming a mile away, and I guess there are other people who, if they died now, people would make fun of them, like, people who were like obviously on the heading sort of downhill, like 14 Love, maybe. I think. I mean, but this all started with the growth of screw you humor in the 80s. There was a very good piece by Arthur Lubau in the New Republic. There was a National Lampoon guy who went into a party, in a high-rise, kept on walking and walked off the balcony and basically jumped to his death. And the people were joking about him the next day. What's flatter than a pancake or something. And that sort of became accepted with the National Lampoony humor, and now it's sort of, there are a million bloggers looking for an edge who can be more National Lampoony than the next guy. And as we all know from the Filer Faster principle, that everything moves faster, so we move through the stages of grief faster and get to the stage where we can laugh at the person in about an hour and a half.
Hey, Mickey?
Yeah?
Oh, okay, you're still there.
You switched audio.
Yeah. Have you been saying interesting...
I've been saying incredibly fascinating things that you completely missed. This is the whole gist of the show that you missed here. Did you actually leave the screen while you were doing this?
I thought I completely lost you. See, my phone is like dead. So I've got these two receivers, remote receivers from the phone downstairs. And the wife warned me that they were low on batteries, and this one started giving me battery warnings, and suddenly I lost you. Okay?
And I got into the part about the growth of National Lampoon's screw you humor.
Oh, this sounds great. Keep going. Sorry. I mean, there was an alternative thing. I could keep using my ear thing by calling you on my cell phone, but why don't we just go in this mode for a while, and if my right hand gets tired, we'll change.
Okay. Well, I was just saying that it all started with the growth of screw you humor in the 80s, and there was an editor of the National Lampoon who actually killed himself, and they were joking about it. Arthur Lubau pointed out in the New Republic that they were joking about it the next day. Mm-hmm. And this sort of vicious humor grew up, and now there are 1,000 bloggers who grew up on this sort of humor, and they're purveying it on the web.
Yeah,
I'm shocked that it would leach into the establishment.
Well, see, I thought with Anna Nicole Smith, I thought really the key thing was just the whole thing of marrying a guy 70 years older than you. I mean, that was totally what she was known for, basically, right? I mean, that's why we heard of her at all. That was the thing that put her on the radar screen.
No. She was known for the Guess jeans ads
before
in the 80s. Oh yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Well,
yeah.
why was she famous enough for that? I mean, wasn't Donna Rice a Guess jeans girl, and she had to get involved in a scandal first?
Was it Guess? No.
It was No Excuses jeans or something.
Yeah, she was. No, Guess is a big brand, and there was a very flashy, sexy campaign that she was featured in, and she was a Playboy centerfold, and it was a big deal. She was, half of a Paris Hilton.
I knew she was a centerfold, but I thought the only thing that distinguished her from your garden variety centerfold was marrying that old guy and seeming possibly to have motivations that were not wholly romantic in doing so.
No, that's not true.
Well, anyway, I still think that's what pushes her across the laugh line. I really do. And then all the guys claiming paternity.
Well, her reality show was apparently pretty awful. Her stumbling around in a drunken haze. It's weird because this is against a trend that I thought that boomers at least are going to have increasing reverence for life as they get closer to death themselves. Mm-hmm. So I predict that more opposition to capital punishment and more opposition to abortion, and this flies in the opposite trend. And I bet there's a big generation gap.
Wait a second. Opposition to capital punishment and abortion?
Yes, the pro-life position. Greater reverence for life means you don't want to kill.
Well, yeah, but that's actually a fusing of left and right. That would be a new version of ideological coherence, right? Right now, those views aren't correlated.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. I would expect that to be the trend. And there are people like Fred Barnes who shifted against the death penalty. I mean, there are people who've made the leap into consistent pro-life positions. But I bet it's a generational thing. I bet there are not a lot of people who are in our generation who are laughing at Anna Nicole Smith as opposed to people in, say, Matt Iglesias' generation. The people who are too big for Bloggingheads. Those young folk are probably much more prone to this sort of cynicism. And the other point I made is it's the Filer Faster principle. We're moving through the stages of grief faster. So everybody now knows where it's going to end up. So, one blogger goes through one stage, the next one the next stage, the next stage, and in an hour and a half, they're into mockery.
Yeah.
The final stage.
Well, this happened really fast.
I mean, anyway.
But I don't know. I don't know what the rule is. I mean, I don't know Who would be the next? I mean, what properties a person has to have to be mocked this quickly after dying?
Popular culture has infused wars too. I mean, people mock the wars as they're fighting them. I don't know if that happened in World War II. Maybe it did. But there's this incredible passage.
There was joking about things like the plight of the soldier and stuff, right?
Yeah. There's this incredible passage in Black Hawk Down where these soldiers are being shot at by Somalians, and while they're being shot at, they're joking about a Steve Martin movie where somebody shoots and a bunch of cans explode because the bullets hit the cans, and Steve Martin says they're mad at the cans, they hate the cans, and these guys were like. They were making the pop culture reference as the firefight was going on.
Yeah, but I think that's the kind of graveyard humor that keeps you, that's a long-standing part of not going totally nuts during war.
I guess so. It's just, I was thinking that people are they're writing Catch-22 in their heads as they're fighting, as opposed to waiting 20 years to write Catch-22.
But I think that kind of humor, that kind of soldier's humor, has always been, long been part of the story. Hey, you know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to call you on this cell phone, and so you just when you hear the call waiting thing, do you hear it?
No, I hear nothing. I hear you.
I mean, when it happens, do you hear it? Did you hear it like 3 minutes ago when I called you?
No.
You didn't?
No, I did not.
Never mind. Let's go with this method.
Let's go with this one.
Yeah.
Let's move rapidly through these topics.
Okay.
North Korea.
North Korea, yes. The Bush administration's deal is being criticized on left and right, but, it's better than nothing, it seems to me. I mean, the claim on the left is he could have had this or a better version years ago.
But that's not true, because this time China is involved in enforcing it, which is a real good thing.
And arguably, the reason China was involved in the strong-arming is, ironically, because the guy did that nuclear test, which seems to have been, in this argument, was his big mistake. So there you go. But the other thing that's different from the earlier years is that the Bush administration, their position had been. They opposed talking to North Korea alone. They insisted on multilateralism. In fact, basically the only time back then that they seemed to be in favor of multilateralism was when espousing it would keep it from actually happening, as kind of was the case here, because it seemed that you had to go through this two-party talks phase to get to something larger, and the Bush administration was refusing to do that. This time they broke down and had two-party, unpublicized talks in Berlin that led to this thing, apparently. So the Bush administration has actually changed its tune a little.
I didn't realize that we'd actually had two-party talks.
This was a story in the New York Times. And of course, it might lead one on the left to ask, well, if you've changed philosophically, why don't you do this with Iran?
Well, and then it leads me to say maybe we are doing it with Iran. We didn't know we were doing it with North Korea. I think we talked about this a few weeks ago. Why on the left are we so sure we're not talking to Iran? We could be hanging around Berlin with Iran too.
We could be. I think we're not. I think we're not, because I think a distinction has been discerned in Condi Rice's rhetoric. I mean, between the two cases, but who knows?
I mean, there was a quote, an obviously anti-Bush quote in the Times, as one senior, it was from a senior administration official. The prospect that Mr. Bush might leave Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and North Korea more dangerous places than he found them can't be very appealing. Well, I don't see why Afghanistan is in any way going to be more dangerous than we left. So he's at least 1 for 4, no?
Oh, that's true. That's funny. That was a David Sanger piece. When I read that quote, it had the Bush administration. What? You don't have the exact quote, do you?
Yeah, it said, as one... Yeah. The only things in quotes are the words, quote, can't be very appealing.
Right. What I imagined was David Sanger saying to the guy, do you think it can be very appealing for blah, 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 blah? And the guy said, thought about it and said, no. And because
not realizing that David Sanger is going to put these words in his mouth.
I mean, I kind of exaggerate, but the piece had the feel of me, David Sanger's angles... how would I put this? Sometimes have the feel of something that's at least as strong as the evidence warrants. You know, look, the best-known reporters are good at this. The late Michael Kelly was a master at this. You know, just going as far as you can go in finding the angle of the story. And look, any journalist knows that leading the witness is part of the game. I mean, as the game is traditionally practiced, whether or not it should be practiced.
Really, I never thought that was fair.
Yeah, but you were never an actual journalist, Mickey. You never worked at like a daily newspaper. Well, you worked at Newsweek, but did you do reportorial pieces?
I did some, but I guess
you've never been a source-based journalist.
No, I had sources, but I never been a daily journalist forced to come up with a new news analysis every time something happens, and that just seems to me to be
a tough game.
This desperate generation of new angles.
Sometimes you just got to explain to the sources what the story is.
But that's that's the problem with the web driving journalism at a faster and faster pace. I mean, that's what Howell Raines wanted to raise the competitive metabolism. That means instead of writing 2 news analyses every week, saying I have to write 3.
That's an interesting point. It does lead probably reporters at daily papers to reach with even greater enthusiasm for angles.
But especially if you have to please your liberal mid-level editors at the New York Times.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just slipped out. I apologize.
It's okay. But I think the basic deal seems better than nothing. We're going to give them not all that much oil before they have to actually deliver and do something. And it's one of those things where there are these incentives laid out down the road, and if they go all the way, they will have let the inspectors back in and actually shut down nuclear reactors. I mean, the most optimistic goals, like honestly just closing their whole infrastructure, A, and B, conceivably even decommissioning what few weapons they seem to have, those are down the road, and that's what people are most pessimistic about. I mean, the source of pessimism I trust is the piece in the Christian Science Monitor, which is, a really good paper. It's a good website. They do a lot of good pieces, and
I didn't read that piece. What did it say?
Well, it just lays out the grounds for skepticism, and it's not like a right-wing, organ. I mean, when John Bolton is skeptical, I don't pay any attention, because John Bolton's going to be disappointed in any deal that doesn't entail immediate regime change. Plus, he's bitter about getting fired. I mean, fired isn't quite the word, because basically the administration realized they couldn't get his nomination through the Senate.
Right.
But
previously he was kicked out of the State Department to the UN, so he was basically ushered out of the administration.
Yeah. So, but anyway, they're getting flack from that side, from the Boltons of the world, and the left isn't so much complaining about the deal as saying you could have done this years ago, and blah blah blah.
But the Christian Science Monitor piece, did it have a new grounds for skepticism, or just the one you just outlined?
I would have to just leave the link for you to click on and read maybe more of the piece than I myself actually assimilated.
Aha. Now your dirty secret is out. Okay.
I didn't claim it. Did I claim that I read the piece?
I don't know.
Maybe I did. I'll have to go back and look. But what I
special-
meant was that a piece saying that from the Christian Science Monitor. I did read part of it, but
we'll see what Patrick Fitzgerald has to say when he reads the transcript.
We will.
I think you might be in some trouble. On to Dinesh D'Souza.
yeah. Now here we're both going to opine about a book we haven't read.
Oh yeah, but this isn't the first time we've done
What's
that.
it called? The Enemy what? Not Among Us. What is it? The Enemy.
Good question.
Well, we should at least know the name of the book, Mickey.
Okay, I have the name of the book. The Enemy at Home.
Right. Now, and the claim there is that the left is responsible for Al-Qaeda's success because they have overseen the degeneration of American culture and so on, and that's one of the things that really drives the jihadists crazy. Is that part of the argument?
And to quote Victor Davis, basically this book has gotten panned everywhere, especially on the right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And according to Victor Davis Hanson, who pans it, says, D'Souza's blaming America. He argues that our decadent culture turns off traditional Muslims, otherwise the potential allies of American conservatives, and often renders them sympathetic to jihadist rhetoric. and his solution, D'Souza's solution, this is Hansen characterizing D'Souza, is for conservatives here to embrace conservative Muslims in a shared struggle against both the American left that misrepresents us and the jihadists who now misrepresent them. Now, it seems to me that, the interesting piece to write would be for somebody to defend D'Souza, because there's a germ of truth here, which is that a lot of the things that conservative Muslims object to, i.e., Britney Spears exposing her private parts to teenagers basically around the clock, are the same things that American conservatives object to, and there's a legitimate grounds for that conservatism. So we should be a little skeptical when we import American commercial culture to foreign countries. And the second thing is that D'Souza is calling for, it's sort of an answer to the standard posture of conservatives, which is, screw you, we're right, you're wrong, you're Muslims, you're crazy, America's right. It's an attempt to dissolve that sort of oppositionism and say, no, let's reach out to embrace what we agree with in Islam. And it seems to me D'Souza should get some credit for that.
Well, I mean, here's what I do think there are things in his argument, as I understand it, that makes sense to me. And I think he kind of blew his chances for getting credit for them when apparently he went beyond that and said some kind of out-and-out semi-crazy things, right? That's my understanding, and I'll tell you what I think what I've heard one of them is.
Well, I've heard that too. What's the one you've heard?
Well, that he wants to actually reinstate blasphemy laws in America.
Huh. Does that mean if you say something nasty about Tim Russert, you go to jail?
Among other things.
What is blasphemy?
No, just, well, God. Blaspheming, basically a speech that's highly offensive to religions is classic blasphemy. But what have you heard about the crazy part?
Well, just that Victor Hansen reads from the list of leftists who Hansen says, D'Souza says, want Al-Qaeda to win. And it includes, Martha Nussbaum, Gary Wills, Salman Rushdie. As this Salman Rushdie he was a fatwa on his head, wants Al-Qaeda to win. So that if he's being correctly, characterized, he's engaged in this sort of right-wing one-upmanship, which is, I want Ann Coulter's book sale, so I want to say things as outrageous as Ann Coulter or more outrageous.
Yeah, I mean...
And maybe he's guilty of that, but there's still
No, there is here's the parts of the argument that I could imagine identifying with. First is, I myself have thought that in American politics, American Muslims and conservative Christians have more in common than they realize, and I would think that in cases when they both have their kids in the public schools, for example, they'd be seeing eye to eye on a lot of issues, right? In terms of the kinds of values that they want taught and the kinds of things they don't want tolerated in the classroom. And so far as I know, that alliance has not happened, but I've thought it would be a healthy thing because one thing you don't want is a lot of alienated Muslims, feeling that they don't have anything in common with non-Muslim Americans.
You're being a little hypocritical because you wouldn't join that alliance, would you? Because you're not.
Actually, there are parts of it I would identify with. I'm morally kind of conservative. I mean. There are definitely things, that happen in the public schools, and my kids, I know this through my kids that I'm not wild about.
Yeah.
I would not go as far as they would, but it's not an alliance that it would not bother me for that alliance to show strength. I'm not talking about prayer in the classroom or anything. I mean, that's where they would part ways anyway.
Okay.
But
so you had a second point coming?
Well, the second point is, and I think you and I agree on this, when I remember with the Janet Jackson incident in the Super Bowl, you and I independently reached the observation that this had to be good for the jihadists, right? That this is exactly what they would like to be able to point to in American culture, and it was broadcast all over the world. Seems to me almost impossible to deny that had no influence in this realm, in the struggle for the hearts and minds of Muslims around the world. And it seems to me almost impossible to imagine that it was a benign influence.
I feel guilty. I feel guilty because I remember during the first Gulf War when we stationed large numbers of troops in Saudi Arabia. I may have talked about this before. They had a sort of Good Morning Vietnam type radio show on the armed forces broadcasting music to the troops, and there was a big debate over what should be the first song that the Americans played to our troops in Saudi Arabia.
It was Rock the Cosmo.
And should we be sensitive to, Arab Muslim concerns? And they said yes, but then the first song they chose was Rock the Cosmo by The Clash, which talks about blowing up Mecca. And I thought that was just great. I mean, at the time, I'm guilty of this. I thought, God, if you're going to take Americans, you've got to take all of America, and we're, foul-mouthed, blaspheming people who believe in, dirty rock and roll. And if you want us to defend your country, that's what you're going to get. And after 9/11, that position looked kind of ill-advised, but I still had a hard time getting it out of my head that playing Rock the Cosmo was a good thing.
I mean, if you want to go further into this territory, a version of what is probably the Muslim critique of American culture is not totally without any validity at all, which is to say America hasn't really totally figured out, there are problems with American culture. I mean, the number of kids born out of wedlock is like immense. It's like, what is it now? You would know. It's like
30%.
Yeah. I mean, and many of them in circumstances where not having two parents means, economic deprivation and other forms of deprivation. And so, it's easy to dismiss a culture that does things like have women in veils, but I think would be in a stronger position if we had our own house in order. And so, in my mind, there's actually a fairly serious sense in which the whole terrorism threat is cause to reevaluate our culture. First of all, avoid gratuitous offense.
Well, what are you going to do about gay marriage, which is an institution where I'm sympathetic to people who want gay marriage, but nothing's going to piss off the Muslims.
Right, I would say that's not gratuitous offense. I mean, I would say, we believe that homosexual rights have just this firm philosophical foundation. And I would say even in the realm of the Janet Jackson Super Bowl thing, and this is why I brought up D'Souza's apparent argument for blasphemy, that's where he totally crosses the line, because all I'm talking about is moral sanction. And this is what drives me crazy. Whenever you complain, and let's review, the Janet Jackson thing, it was not just a breast. It was a celebration of male sexual aggression. It was a stylized rape, okay?
Right, I agree.
And as, a father of daughters, I was not amused. And I'm not looking for that to be illegal, depicting that in a pseudo-artistic way, but I think it should draw some moral sanction. And I think a president should say that wasn't good, but Bush didn't have enough nerve to do that and alienate a few football fans. But I would draw the line at legal sanction. No, I'm not in favor of censorship, and it always kills me the way liberals, of which I am one by and large, of course, when you say something like this, they start acting as if you're embracing censorship. And there's this crucial distinction.
But then D'Souza goes ahead and does embrace
And then he does, right. That's why I say, if indeed what I heard, and I heard this from someone who is reviewing his book at this moment, if indeed he does say that, it seems self-destructive.
He may have been following the philosophy of a recent blogging head, who I will not name for fear of libeling them, which is you should always stick something completely outrageous in your book, even if you don't agree with it, so you'll get attention. I'll leave it to you to figure out who that was, because I heard this secondhand.
I don't know. I know who you're talking about.
Okay. Anyway, so, but basically nobody is standing up to say there's a germ of truth to D'Souza, which seems, the world is crying out for the contrarian pro-D'Souza piece.
Well,
that's what I say.
Well, yeah, but it wouldn't be surprising enough if you wrote it, so you want me to write it, right? We just did it.
No, I suggested it to the Slate editors to see if they would commission it. I haven't heard back.
We just did the piece, Mickey.
Well, but we, other people have to execute our brilliant editorial suggestions.
Okay.
What else do we got?
I think that was,
We're making record progress here. We
might finish in under an hour, you think?
we may spare our viewers even a few minutes if we cruise through the final section.
Yeah, well, plus the batteries on this phone really are going to die at some point, I think. Yeah, if they do, I'm going to call you back, okay? It will not
But
be...
we were going to... Okay,
we will not take that as God ending the dialogue.
All right.
Keep the camera rolling, and I'll call you back. Okay, so what, we're going to get into viewer comments or something?
Yeah.
Can I start with some comments on the Facebook Blogging Heads group?
Sure. Don't piss them off, though.
Well, listen, they've got me a little riled, Mickey, and I'm just not sure I can keep myself under control. And I think you're not going to be pleased either, believe me. Listen to this. The subject is lack of female Blogging Heads viewership. Nathaniel Allen writes, this was back when there were only 74 members of this group, the Blogging Heads, the Facebook Blogging Heads group. Nathaniel writes, out of the current 74 members, I only count 4 female members, and he's done the calculation. That's 5.4%. Does anyone think this is representative of the makeup of the overall Blogging Heads viewership? And if so, how could more females be enticed to watch? Now, I'm sure you would applaud his goal of increasing the number of female viewers, Mickey, would you not?
Yeah,
You're with him so far. You're with him so far.
I think it is representative, and I think we have mostly male viewers.
We have work to do. Nathan Oliver replies to Nathaniel, you could try to convince Bob and Mickey to do a topless vlog. To which Nathaniel replies, no, I said attract the ladies, not drive them away. I'm not amused, Mickey.
No, but I tend to think when men blog topless, it doesn't really attract women.
It doesn't?
No.
You think it doesn't? You want to give it a shot?
It does attract some people, but those people are not women, I don't think.
You don't want to give it a shot right now?
No, I don't think so. I'm out of shape, man. I have to.
You're so hard on yourself.
I have to tone up before I go topless.
Yeah, I just need to get a testosterone patch and spend a little time at the gym.
I thought it was going to be worse.
Yeah, no, I'm actually kind of joking. It's okay. What's alarming is that Nathaniel is like an officer.
So hard for me to tell.
In the group, you know, and he's treating us like this.
But we had a babe on. I guess that's not going to bring in women. Maybe it's perverse. Maybe if you have women on, women watch it. How weird is that?
We've had a few babes.
That's true. But yet our audience is still 5.4% female.
Well, in Facebook, we don't know if that's representative. But no, I think we have work to do. And I'm going to leave that to you.
Okay.
Now,
I think the roses will help. The flowers will help.
Yeah.
So
I'm willing to surrender them.
Feminine touch.
Now, comments?
Yeah.
Do you have any?
I had one, which is, we had this discussion of the carbon tax.
Yeah, I flagged one of those.
Why are people acting like Ann Applebaum or Robert Samuelson or anyone who started advocating a carbon tax in the past week is on to some new brilliant idea? Economists and environmentalists have been talking about carbon taxes for quite a long time. Furthermore, why do Applebaum and Samuelson have to spend so much time pretending to be saving the global warming movement from itself? Then he goes on, why do they have this strange emotional need to distance themselves from environmentalists while calling for an environmentalist policy? It's sort of, this is the self-defeating attitude of the left, which is every time somebody comes around to your position, you greet them with a fusillade of abuse for not agreeing with them earlier, and instead of looking for converts, you look for heretics. And, why haven't you moved lockstep with the movement for decades? Well, when you get somebody who agrees with you, you should welcome them. So I chastise Consumatopia, who is the author, not his real name, or her, but probably him, for this this ineffective left-wing purist attitude.
Yeah. Well, I flag a comment by Feck also on the carbon tax issue, and it leads me to want to make my position clear. Okay, I'm not against the U.S. unilaterally passing a carbon tax. My point was, Ann Applebaum wrote this column saying that a sufficient response to the global warming problem is just to let nations that choose to enact a carbon tax.
Well, but I thought you were wrong. I mean, she was saying, look, we've tried this hard thing, which is, Kyoto-like caps on emissions. It's very hard to do. It's hard for nations to do. There's this easier thing that's a little less effective, It's a lot easier for nations to do unilaterally. Let's try that. Why isn't that a perfectly reasonable op-ed column?
Because a unilateral action will not get this problem solved in timely fashion, Mickey. I mean, there's no solution in timely fashion. The best we can do is kind of slow the rate of degradation.
Well, sometimes unilateral action is enough. I mean,
yeah, but Mickey, this is so obviously a case where it's not, because as I said to you, it's a collective action problem. It's a free rider problem.
Right. The one way you achieve collective action is having a superpower over all the individuals, like the United Nations, with the power to enforce them and make them do things. Good luck with that, Bob. Another way you do it is by getting everybody in a room and shaming them. And that's the Applebaum solution, and why not give it a try? That sometimes works.
Well, first of all,
every year you have a conference, you say, have you passed a carbon tax? You, and you make them pledge. And chances are enough of them might go and do it if it's easy enough to do, and it's easier to pass a carbon tax than it is to impose cash.
First of all, Mickey, the idea that the multilateral approach has failed, okay, just because the first effort didn't fail, and remember, it mainly failed because of Americans like Applebaum. America was what stood in the way. Now, the solution we were working on was not perfect. I'd prefer a better one that puts a bigger burden on China and so on. But if you want to ask, why didn't it work? Because of the Ann Applebaums of American opinion, Mickey. Because America wouldn't sign on.
It didn't work because it was kind of hard to do, and she's saying, let's do something that's easy.
It didn't work because we didn't sign on, Mickey. I mean, we didn't even see if it would work.
We didn't sign on for a reason, Bob. The reason was because it would have plunged our economy into chaos.
Oh, yeah. Well, then how can you favor a carbon tax if that would be a reasonable way to get to the goal?
Because the carbon tax is less chaotic. It's a case of looking at input, not output. Usually one looks at output, not input, and say, we want to achieve this goal. Let's pledge to achieve the goal.
Wouldn't we have had the option of using a carbon tax to achieve Kyoto goals?
Right, but her point is it's easier to pledge to do a carbon tax than to do a carbon tax that's enough to prove that the goals are going to be achieved.
No, she doesn't want us to pledge to do anything. She doesn't want the word pledge in the sentence, Mickey. She's saying it's such a beautiful idea that we'll just do nothing and nations will fall into line and all pass these carbon taxes. To which I said last time, well then why hasn't it happened already?
She doesn't say do nothing, Bob. You're completely mischaracterizing her position. I don't even know if she was opposed to the Kyoto Accords. You don't either.
She says she does not. That column says, unless she's really trying to hide the ball, to the extent that it says anything about multilateral action, she's saying she does not want a concerted international approach. And that's why, you can tell that I kind of find her column a little annoying, and it's why I quit reading it so long ago, is because her function on the Washington Post op-ed page, it seems to me, is to always kind of sound like a centrist and wind up embracing the right-wing solution and invading whatever country that they want to invade and blah, blah, blah. And she sounds, and I don't think you, when you read the column, even realized that she was rejecting an international approach to solving a collective action problem. If you read the column...
I thought she was saying the international approach had failed, which you admit it has.
An international approach failed, partly because of America, okay? But that doesn't mean that they're doomed to fail. In any event, it's intrinsic in the problem that you're going to have an international approach. Now, could you have something short of the entire globe signing on? Sure. You could have, as Mike Lind pointed out, actually, on a recent dialogue, you could have a number of big countries that collectively constitute a huge part of the problem get together and reach an agreement. But it's the kind of problem that requires an agreement, because if you're the only nation that acts, then you shoulder all the burden, whereas the benefits are bestowed on all humankind.
I don't think she was advocating unilateral action. Anyway,
she is.
You rely on the power of shame to dissuade 100 million American boys from acting like Justin Timberlake. Why can't the power of shame convince 11 nations to impose a carbon tax without the United Nations?
In the realm you're talking about, I'm not under the illusion that shame will do the job. It's just that in that case, the alternative, which is legal sanction, carries such grave side effects, like suppression of free speech, that I'm not willing to embrace it. In this case, international agreements, in my ideology, do not have any such horrible side effect. To Ann Applebaum, they do. And if you think she's not rejecting an international legalistic approach to the problem, I really encourage you to read that column again, Mickey. Yeah, but it is part of the way she writes it to kind of almost to keep that fact very subtle. If you read it, it's clear. She's rejecting a concerted international effort in any kind of legal framework.
Don't you think that if the United States adopted a carbon tax, that would have a nice demonstration effect for the rest of the world, and other people would say, if the United States can do it, we can do it, and that, I mean, we're not going to stop global warming. All we're going to do is slow it. The more carbon taxes you have, the slower it goes.
Yep.
Every little bit helps.
Every little bit does help, but the fact that the most we can hope to do is slow it, and it's a grave problem, suggests to me that we should get on the case immediately and do all we can, not that we should adopt a casual approach. I don't follow that logic.
Why is her approach casual? It's saying this is...
She's saying let's do nothing at the international level and hope that all these nations that for some reason have chosen not to pass a carbon tax suddenly change their mind after reading Ann Applebaum's column.
I don't think that was her attitude. But
well, what did she know? You tell me. What's she proposing, Mickey?
She's proposing that we urge nations of the world to switch to a carbon tax, and that we switch to a carbon tax, and the argument is, they have to tax something. Why not tax carbon?
All of this brings us back to Thek, who notes that the reason carbon taxes are a non-starter is because of various political obstacles. It's political suicide for any politician to express any interest for any kind of potential tax increase. And I mean, it's basically true that, look, increasing taxes is extremely politically difficult to do. Now, you can imagine, getting rid of one tax and replacing it with another, but the way these things work is there will be an entrenched lobby group opposed to the new tax. So, independent of the fact that you're going to eliminate some other tax, it's going to be very difficult to do. The key point is that her column seems to assume that to the extent that a carbon tax is just a rational thing, we can expect it to automatically happen. And she's ignoring political obstacles of the kind that actually exist at the national level.
I do not think she can't be under any illusions that the carbon tax is an incredibly easy thing to do. She just thinks it's easier than the alternatives, and she wasn't saying we shouldn't put pressure on other countries.
So you are opposed to any kind of actual treaty on global warming among any number of nations?
No, I didn't say that, but I think her point was that this is the main chance to reduce global warming quickly.
Well, but you said her column was wonderful, and she is opposed to it.
Because I hadn't thought, she thought things through in a way I hadn't. I haven't paid any attention to this issue at all. And I didn't, when you explain the logic of the carbon tax versus other means of achieving the same goal, it's quite appealing.
Yeah, no, it's a tool I would recommend that we use now, but especially after we signed some Kyoto-like treaty that obliged us to reduce greenhouse gases by a certain amount.
Well, anyway, why not go for the quick informal thing first and
As
follow
I
up
said,
on the treaty?
I'm not opposed to our passing a carbon tax, and that's one thing I wanted to clarify.
No, you said first we have to sign a treaty.
No, I don't feel that. No.
First is in there.
Well, it's true that as a bargaining matter, you wouldn't want to give away the store first, but passing the carbon tax in itself is not going to immediately lower your greenhouse levels. But I'm not opposed to unilateral carbon tax. But as a solution to the global warming problem, that's just so far shy of what's needed as to be almost comical.
If every nation in the world passed a substantial carbon tax, that wouldn't have a huge effect. I think it would.
Mickey,
what do I know?
Mickey, the point is they won't. It's not, we have a stronger motivation to do this than almost any country because we are more bent on for example, depriving, oil sheiks of revenue and so on. And we have, urban pollution problems and so on, and we have organized well-educated environmentalist lobbies, and we haven't even done it. Again, it's just incredibly naive of her to think that it's just going to happen magically.
You haven't done your thing either.
No, but that's because Ann Applebaum's ideology has prevailed, Mickey. That's why I'm opposed to it.
I think we've reached a consensus here that the central problem in the world is Ann Applebaum. and if only we could somehow get her off the op-ed page of the Washington Post.
I'm glad you agree. There are a lot of things I'd like to get off the op-ed page of the Washington Post.
And here I thought Ron Burkle was the focus of evil in the modern world.
No, she's one of about 5 things I'd like to get off the Washington Post op-ed page.
I was so wrong.
Well,
okay. Well, you've managed to push us over an hour. Congratulations.
Wait, I'm not done. Although this phone is almost ready to die.
Okay.
Oh.
I am done. So.
Okay. Just this guy who clearly knows the story, has been watching us for a while because I recognize the name, says, I'm as good a Republican as Mickey is, but I lived in New York City pre-9/11, and I saw some of the stuff that's going to be thrown at Rudy, blah, blah, blah. It's that first clause, I'm as good a Republican as Mickey is. Now, Mickey, how do you think a faithful and perceptive viewer could get the idea that you're a Republican? Are you a Republican?
No, but I don't know. Many people have that false impression.
It's amazing.
Anyway, there are some nasty anti-Rudy things coming out now that are. He does, this thing that he runs the government with a small clique of friends, etc., etc. And some of those friends are Bernard Kerik. That could be a liability.
Yeah. Well, my battery thing is beeping.
Cool. Well,
so I think I am about to lose you for real this time.
I think that is a message from God.
I do too.
Or from Tim Russert.
No, I think it's God saying, "Job well done, guys, but don't push your luck."
Okay, Bob. I just want to say,
Happy Valentine's Day.
I love you,
and
man.
Mickey, I want to hold up what's left of this cupcake, which is less than was left at the beginning, and say, if you were here, I would give you about a third of it, man.
That's pathetic. Anyway, I'll see you later.
Okay, see ya.
Okay, bye.